President Trump's tax agenda is taking center stage on Wall Street. Joining us now, Ohio Senator Rob Portman. And how you doing, Senator?
Hey, Joe, I'm doing well. How are you?
I DM'd you about Skyline Chili, and I never heard back from you about it. I've seen some crazy stuff about that, but Cincinnati
Look
Chili.
Look at you, hipster, DMing people.
Yeah, I DM'd him on because we follow each other.
You and Anthony
Senator
Weiner.
probably has his own. Senator, do you do your own tweets, or you have staff for that?
When I'm at Skyline, I do my own tweets. I'm such a big spender. Every Valentine's Day, I take Jane there, but we've got one in the neighborhood. And Joe, you're welcome anytime.
Oh, thank you. So I just read the possibility of another Freedom Caucus member exiting that group. And just off camera, we were talking about who won last week, whether Trump actually is in maybe President Trump is in a better position. Because maybe there's some recrimination with those guys. What are you feeling? Just the zeitgeist around both houses right now with what happened last week? Where are we? We doing it again, or really doing tax reform now?
Well, I think probably tax reform is now the higher priority. But I do think we kind of touch gloves. Republicans and some Democrats as well on health care. And it's a complicated issue, obviously, and we can't give it up because right now the status quo is unacceptable to everybody, even to Democrats, by the way. They can't defend the higher premiums and higher deductibles and the lack of choice. But I think probably health care is the thing that people are more focused on for after a tax reform discussion. And tax reform is going to be tied up into other things now, including, I believe, infrastructure, but also getting through the debt limit. And so I think we're more on the fiscal side of the House now. This
is like a chess match now, because you need it'd be better to have the trillion, because then you're going to, 28, you don't want, 28's not enough. Is it? That's Obama. President Obama was ready to do 28, supposedly, although he never pushed it. He's too focused on, those other issues. But
Joe, he never pushed it, and his 28% on the business side was coupled with a $2 trillion tax increase on the individual and pass-through side. So that's not what we're talking about here.
Gun registration and climate change, I think, was in there too. Those were the two.
Those were all,
those are the
part
two
of the tax
priorities.
code.
That's all we talked about for 8 years, basically.
But so, look, we talked about this so many times on the show, but we have such a great potential here to improve the tax code, to make it more competitive, and to help U.S. workers and increase salaries, which is, the big issue now is how do we actually get this economy moving in a way that actually gets salaries up? And all the studies show that our tax code has become so antiquated and out of date with what the rest of the world is doing that if we just make some changes to lower the rate, broaden the base, do the repatriation that was talked about earlier on the show, bring some of this $2.5 trillion back, you could improve the economy and give it a shot in the arm. So I think there's more consensus around that than there was around health care.
You said something weird, though, Senator, and that is that, you touch gloves with the Democrats. I saw it a different way. I thought that the Freedom Caucus came back and said, look, maybe we can get to yes somehow. And are you saying that center of gravity moved even further towards the Democrats with health care reform? Or do you think it's now possible to do something to get the Freedom Caucus to say yes and then keep moderates on board?
Yeah, when I said we touch gloves, I said even with some Democrats, not a lot of Democrats, but some Democrats were interested toward the end there saying, maybe we could work with you on something. But no, I think you're right. I think if we're going to do health care, probably it will involve the Freedom Caucus and the Tuesday group and all these groups coming together. I think that's going to take some time, Joe. As you know, I always believed this needed more time just because it's not only incredibly complicated, it's so important to the lives of all of our constituents. And the Medicaid issue is really a separate issue, in my view, from the Affordable Care Act issues that deal with the exchanges and the mandates and so on the private sector. So these are complicated issues, and I think we've got to keep working through it because the status quo doesn't work. But in the meantime, we've got sort of a looming fiscal issue here. How do we deal with the budget, the debt limit, and the urgent need for us to change our tax code?
Your prediction on Gorsuch, whether it goes nuclear or not, I think half have said no, but there's still a possibility of getting 8 or 9, or is there? I don't know, of Democrats for Gorsuch. What do you think right now? And you think the nuclear thing is the only way to go?
Well, I don't know because it depends, obviously, on the Democrats. The sense is that Senator Schumer may have done his vote count and decided he has the votes to be able to block this nomination. That would be a shame because this is not the way that the Senate traditionally over 200 years has dealt with Supreme Court nominations. You have to look back to Abe Fortas the last time that a Supreme Court nomination was successfully blocked on a partisan basis by a filibuster, and that was bipartisan, by the way, with Abe Fortas. So it just hasn't been the tradition around here. I mean, probably the most controversial one recently has been Clarence Thomas. You know, he was voted in without a filibuster. So I would hope that we would avoid the filibuster. Let's have an up or down vote. Give the guy an up or down vote. He's incredibly qualified across the spectrum in the judicial world. You know, people respect him and like him. So let's let this guy have an up or down vote and get him on the court.
Hey, Senator, real quick, have you come up with a formal position yet on the border adjustment tax?
Well, my feeling is that we ought to do what we can to get tax reform done. And the border adjustment tax, although I understand some of the economic reasons for it and the fact that it does bring in more revenue because of the tax that importers would be paying, that let's go for a more traditional approach at this point and see if we can build consensus around that. And that would be lowering the rates, broadening the base, doing the stuff we've talked about for a long time to go to a territorial system internationally. Let's just simplify the darn thing. I mean, on the individual side, there's a great opportunity to get down to 3 rates and to actually get rid of some of the underbrush in the code. And to the point of distribution, you know, who's going to pay and who's not going to pay, you know, I think your previous person who talked about that is probably right. Probably at the end of the day, the distribution on the individual side is not going to favor the wealthy. In fact, it can favor more middle-class taxpayers.
It's not very bold. It's not very bold. But you know what? I think it's impossible to do anything bold anymore. You can't even do anything plain vanilla in that place anymore.
Well, it's pretty bold if it ends up stopping American companies from taking their jobs.
Border adjustment would be, you know, there's pretty smart people that think it's worth a lot of money and it actually would transform a lot, you know, the whole system. And other people do it anyway. You're kind of, you know, you're timid on that. You're bold. Think bold, Senator. Bold.
Hey, it's bold to get those rates down and to get rid of the preferences in the code that shouldn't be there, the social engineering, and to go to a territorial system. And, you know, let's get on with it. I mean, it's been a long time we've been talking about it.
Yeah, see? That should tell you something, right? Andrew's with you. How you feel now, Senator?
Where's Becky is what I want to know. She's the tiebreaker.
She's anti-border tax, too.
Come on, quick. Let us know.
I'm very hesitant about the border tax. I am.
Do it.
Because I don't know how it would work.
Be bold. Be bold.
Listen,
Druckenmiller.
Hey, Senator, thanks again. Great to see you as always.
We should and we can be bold, but let's get
bold.
Buster returns in just a moment, guys. We'll be back.